Like the video, subscribe, and comment your country below so I know who's listening tonight. Turn off the lights and put on headphones for the full horror experience. Let's begin the nightmare. If you're brave enough. I never thought a single mirror could hold a secret big enough to swallow a school, but then I had never really looked at that old boy's bathroom behind the auditorium until the night everything began to change. The building had been standing longer than anyone could remember. Bricks eaten at the corners, an auditorium that smelled like varnish and old applause, and like most old schools it had places students avoided on purpose. The boiler room with its endless drip, the janitor's closet that smelled of bleach and lost things, and the boys' bathroom with a mirror that always blurred when you looked too long. We joked about it in class like people joke about hurricanes, as if making light of something keeps it from paying attention. Then Ethan went missing and jokes felt small and mean, and suddenly the mirror was a thing that swallowed time. The first time I noticed anything odd, it was subtle, the way the mirror didn't reflect the fluorescent lights properly. At midday the rest of the corridor glowed with that flat school light, but the mirror swallowed it, returning only a dim, sunken version of the world. If you leaned close, your breath fogged it for a second, then cleared, and for a blink, half a heartbeat, the reflection behind your eyes felt off. The tiles in the mirror were one shade darker. The soap dispenser looked older. I told myself it was bad glass, warped frame. Clean it and the problem will go away. That's what every sensible person tries first. Clean the mirror. Fix the wiring. Make sure you're not tired. But when I wiped at the streaks, I found no streaks, and when I wiped the grime, there was still something behind the glass not quite lining up with reality. After Ethan disappeared, the hallways were quieter. Teachers changed their routines like they were adjusting a thermostat to keep the temperature of fear steady. Parents told their kids not to hang around after school. We learned to move in clumps and never go near the auditorium unless forced by a rehearsal. People whispered two things: that Ethan had been last seen heading to the bathroom to fix his tie before the awards assembly, and that he had been seen staring into that mirror by himself at 7:14 p.m., which is the kind of time detail that sounds made up until it isn't. I replayed the footage again and again in my head. Ethan in the hallway, his shoulders too narrow under that old varsity jacket, the bass of his laugh a second before no one heard it again. Some of us cracked jokes to keep the panic breathable. Some of us started to take different routes home. The mirror had a frame hewn from oak, scabbed with small gouges and ink scribbles from older students who thought carving a name into would make them eternal. When you stood before it, the metal soap sign to your left read soap in letters half eroded by time. A cracked tile at your feet made the floor uneven and your shoes clicked louder. The mirror reflected all of that, but it always added one detail the real world forgot. Someone standing just behind you, half visible, blurred at the edges like a long exposure photograph. At first I thought it was an afterimage, something your eyes made up when you stare too long at a surface. I thought about asking someone to stand behind me, just to prove it false. I had the chance too. A day the janitor was late and the hall was empty, and when I turned slowly the mirror showed only my empty shoulders and the row of lockers behind me. The something vanished like a liar at the sound of a truth. We started talking about the mirror in whispers and dares. If a rumor circulates long enough, someone will take it seriously, and if enough people take it seriously, the rumor stops being rumor. That night a small group of us, me, Tara, and Malik, stayed past rehearsal. Tara wanted to film a ghost for her channel. Low subscribers, high effort. Malik wanted to prove there was nothing supernatural in a clever way that would make him viral. I wanted to be there because sitting at home with my phone off felt like admitting defeat. The auditorium emptied, the lights clicked off in a line like breathing, and we walked with flashlights, more for theater than necessity. The corridor smelled of wax and dust and a weird mixture of lemon and something metallic, like if pennies could be bottled up and sniffed. We pushed the bathroom door open together. The bell over the door made a tired, thin sound. The bathroom was exactly as it had always been. Half of the lights flickered, one stall door hung ajar, the urinals were lined like rows of sentinel teeth. But the mirror looked older, darker, and from the corner of our flashlights it seemed to swallow the beam whole. Tara pointed the phone and spoke into it, breath visible in the screen as a white cloud. "If you liked the video, hit subscribe," she whispered with a laugh too high for the place. Malik put his hand on the wood of the frame and it was cool, like stone. "For the camera," he said. "Okay, no games. Someone's been messing with the lighting. Let's test." He tapped the mirror glass, and the sound came back hollow, like knocking on a wooden chest. We watched. For a while nothing changed, and that is the worst kind of waiting, because even fear becomes a presence you would rather have than a nothing that keeps you tense. Then something in the mirror moved with independent will. A shadow peeled away from the glass and folded itself into the way the reflection should be. It was like watching a second of film rewind. The world on the other side of the glass rerouted to include another figure, a man tall and thin, his shoulders too broad for a normal fit, his head half-shaved, half losing the suggestion of hair to a matte definite patch where skin seemed smoother than it should. He wore an old suit with shoulders that had been padded back when fashion tried to give men presents. His features were not clear, but the mouth was. The mouth was a thin, straight line that did not smile and did not frown. It whispered something we could not yet hear. Tara's phone picked up a sound then. A low hiss like someone speaking with a microphone turned sideways. She leaned closer, lips brushing the screen, and suddenly she let out a soft, horrified sound. "He says your name," she breathed. Malik laughed nervously, an edge of bravado hiding in it, and called out, "Name? Say my name then." The figure in the mirror turned its head in the exact tempo you would expect if something were testing a new toy. The glass man lifted an invisible hand and pointed. The air in the bathroom dropped, temperature-wise, like the building inhaled a breath. That is a way to explain the chill. The room did not get cold. The world registered a colder statistical variable than warmth. The hairs on my forearms twitched. The voice came, but it didn't come from the mirror alone. It arrived as a chorus of half-heard syllables and a clarity that felt like a smack. "Michael." It said my name cleanly. Not Malik. Not Malik's bravado. Michael. My throat closed. I remembered the time I had been 10 and played in the schoolyard and someone called me from across the field and my heart had a small hiccup of joy. The voice did that same half-memory trick and then added, low and patient and hungry, "Come behind. Come meet me." Tara's phone video captured the glass figure saying it. For all the bravado Malik tried to keep, his jaw worked as if something invisible was putting sugar in his throat. We fled the bathroom in a mess of shoes, knocked chairs, and the bells echoed Little Ring behind us like a laugh. The auditorium spooked, folding itself around our small youthful noise. Malik flicked the footage off later that night, but the image was burned into me, the way the man in the mirror watched without breathing. The next day, Ethan's locker was found empty except for one thing: a small, folded handkerchief with the initials E.L. and a dark smudge at the corner. No phone, no bag. A note on the board: he left before assembly. People whispered and the rumor machine hummed. Someone said they'd seen him in the bathroom that night but dismissed it as sibling rivalry, a joke, another bad plan gone wrong. The principal said calm, rehearse things about safety and resilience, and parents clutched their phone screens. Days became a weave of normal classes and a quiet that was getting thicker at the edges. Students watched the boys' bathroom door like people watch a bird's nest after a hawk appears, with a new understanding that this small place could contain violence you couldn't see until it had already arrived. The janitor put a sign up, "Out of order. Please use facilities across hall." That was how we stayed away. People changed their routes. Assemblies moved. But rumors don't go away because a sign gets taped to a door. Rumors hide under the paper and they grow. Then came the nights when the bathroom mirror began to alter not only what we saw but what we left behind. A chair my art teacher left in the hall disappeared from the foyer and appeared leaned against the bathroom door. A science magazine vanished from the library and surfaced under the basin. Books began to show up stacked beside the mirror. Not placed neatly, but arranged like offerings. Once, a red scarf appeared on the sink, draped like a ribbon someone had knotted and abandoned. When Tara picked it up, she found a smear of something dark on the inside. She threw it in the trash, and later that evening the trash can outside the office was found emptied and the scarf placed back on the restroom windowsill. Things escalated in a way that makes you think a building is slowly learning the shape of attention. We joked too loud about being brave, and the jokes were turned into rituals. Standing before the mirror became a dare, and dares become practices when boredom leads to devotion. At the end of 1 week, young students began to leave notes taped to the frame. James was here. Do not look, call your M.O.M. They were childish and serious at the same time. The mirror started returning messages. At first it would only fog a pattern of letters when you breathed on it. M-E-E-T. Then, if you waited long enough, and someone always waited long enough, your name would appear, slowly formed from condensation as if the glass exhaled letters from a piano-sized lung. The principal called an emergency meeting and told us it was vandalism. He was tired, and the tiredness had hollowed out his voice. He suggested installing cameras in the hallway to catch the perpetrators. It was a sensible solution. Cameras make people careful, and that is the point cameras exist. We cheered the idea as if surveillance were a blanket. The first night the cameras went up, the footage bewildered us. The feed played back a corridor where a camera had been installed, but the angle was wrong. The camera showed the mirror, but behind it the corridor extended into a velvet darkness where there should have been lockers. People leaned on their elbows, and the grain of the video looked odd, like the signal came from a different frequency of light. Then, around 2:07 a.m., the video caught a shape wearing school colors stepping into view. It looked like a boy. It walked through the corridor toward the bathroom, pressing its hand to the glass and aligning its face with the eyes of the mirror man. The footage flickered, and when the janitor rewound to 2:08 a.m., the screen showed an empty hallway and a note, a scrap of paper taped to the camera's little box. The janitor, who had worked the building for 30 years and who believed in plumbing and curses and nothing more, took one look and turned white. He muttered, "It knows our names now." We kept watching the camera footage because fear has a gravity that urges you to look at how you will be hurt. During the week the pattern deepened. Names appeared from condensation, and then on the screen the mirror did something no mirror should. It opened. The glass did not break. It rolled inward like a theater curtain, and a hand reached out. Here is a thing you need to understand. A hand that belongs not to the living has the wrong light catch on it. It does not scatter lights the same way bone and skin do. It sifts the beam and keeps it. When the hand entered the world, it cast a shadow that had its own depth, like something inside the school had an extra space on the other side, and then a voice that no throat should have produced said, clearly, for all of us through our speakers, "He is behind now." The kids watching on the screen that night saw what I saw. The hand curled, and the empty corridor filled with an absence so dense you could feel your own tiredness increase. They came for Tara first, because she wanted a jump in views more than she wanted to be safe. She stayed late to edit footage for her channel, headphones wrapped like a crown around her head, and she always liked being at the edge, poking where things looked fragile. She was alone in the computer lab when the software crashed, and the only thing that loomed on her monitor was a live feed of the boy's mirror. She stood and walked to the door, and the footage showed her standing in the hall. The mirror behind her fogged, and her name condensed on the glass in precise round letters. She laughed, a nervous sound. For a minute she made a joke into her phone and posted a short clip, "Mirror says hi," and then the live feed flickered and the janitor came on the screen, walking calm and slow toward the auditorium, though the janitor had been frying fish at his house, which 3 teachers could confirm. On the live footage, the janitor reached the mirror, placed a hand on the frame, and then Tara's reflection turned without her moving, lifted a finger to her lips, and mouthed a plea none of us could hear. In the lab, Tara froze exactly where the screen showed her frozen, and then she turned her head slowly as if pulled by invisible strings and walked into the bathroom. No one in the lab could physically stop her because no one in our school had the language for this kind of machine. The last frame the camera showed before the feed died was the mirror's surface clearing away like water poured off a window, and behind it a pressure of man-sized silhouette pressing forward. Tara's phone later rang with a video file she herself had never sent. It was 4 seconds long, a hand, long and pale, waving in slow, jerked motions, and the caption typed by her own number, in letters she swore she had not typed, read, "Come meet him." The police did their kind of good work. They walked the halls, they called parents, they took statements. They left because there were no tracks anywhere, no forced entry, no fingerprints. They are useful people. They leave you feeling watched in a different way. Watched by a system that refuses to see the things that matter. After Tara's disappearance, the school filled with a sheen like a bruise. Attendance fell. Parents demanded answers. The principal insisted we needed to keep calm. Yet the mirror kept practicing, and the school kept listening, and names on condensation continued to appear. On the floor before the mirror, in the puddle of a leaking faucet, someone had left a folded scrap of paper. I bent and picked it up. The handwriting was small and neat, and the letters were not those of any student who had learned cursive in the last 10 years. It read only a single sentence: "He remembers what you sound like." I put the note in my pocket like a talisman, and for days I kept turning the phrase over. "He remembers what you sound like," as if the mirror kept a ledger of voices and would call them back when the bookkeeping pleased it. That night, lying in bed, I could not keep myself from whispering my name, testing whether I would hear it returned like taut string. My phone remained silent. The dark in my room felt like the glass pressed flat against my face. I told myself to sleep and hoped that was enough. The night deepened, and with it, the garden's silence thickened like fog. Every step you took away from the fountain seemed to pull you into a deeper pocket of darkness, as if the world behind you had been swallowed. There was no wind now, no rustling leaves, only a heavy, suffocating stillness that made your breaths feel too loud, too alive. The path ahead forked into 2 trails, both choked by tall, skeletal hedges. One trail dipped downward into a mist that seemed to crawl across the ground like living smoke. The other wound upward, flanked by thorn-covered vines that pulsed faintly, as though something beneath their bark drew breath. You hesitated, and as you did, something cold brushed against your ankle. Quick, deliberate. You froze and dropped your gaze. Nothing. Just wet soil and scattered petals. But the sensation lingered on your skin, icy, mocking your senses. With forced calm, you chose the downward trail. The mist curled around your shins, damp and strangely warm, like breath exhaled from many unseen mouths. The smell of roses faded, replaced by something metallic, something stale, something like blood left to rot in the ground. A lamp-post appeared ahead, old, bent, glass cracked. Its weak yellow light flickered with a feverish pulse, illuminating a wooden bench beneath it. On the bench sat a porcelain doll, dressed in a faded crimson gown, head tilted unnaturally far to one side, as if its neck had snapped years ago. You were certain it hadn't been there before. Its glass eyes, a murky green clouded with age, stared at the ground, but there was an unnerving awareness about its posture, like it was listening, waiting. A rhythmic dripping sound echoed nearby. A soft pat, 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 like liquid falling from great height and landing on stone. You followed the sound. Around the bend, the trail opened into a small courtyard. In the center stood a statue, marble, its surface stained with dark streaks that looked too deep to be rain. The statue depicted a woman, her face frozen mid-scream, mouth open wide, hands clawing desperately at invisible restraints around her throat. The dripping came from her. Thick, black liquid seeped from the cracks around her eyes, trickling down her cheeks in long viscous streams, dripping from her chin to the tiled ground below. Where it landed, the stones hissed, tiny wisps of smoke rising. You stepped back, involuntary, and a whisper rose from the mist behind you. "Don't look at her mouth." You spun. Nothing but fog. But the voice hadn't been a gust or hallucination. It was close. Female. Breathless. Fearful. Your heart hammered. Against reason, you craned your eyes upward, toward the statue's mouth. Something moved inside it. Not an insect. Not an animal. But something fleshy. Wet. A thick, dark tongue slithered slowly outward, tasting the air, swollen and twitching with hungry intent. A sharp crack echoed, like stone snapping. The statue's fingers twitched. Once. Twice. Then they began to curl, grinding painfully against marble, forcing themselves into motion despite the resistance of stone. Fingernails, long, jagged, scraped across the statue's arms, leaving thin trails as if trying to peel away her own skin. A low groan vibrated from deep inside the sculpture. Your instincts screamed at you to run, but your legs would not move. Your body felt weighted, pinned by some ancient gravity that did not belong to the natural world. The tongue slid further out, now extending inches, writhing like an eel, pointed at you. The smoky mist recoiled from it as if even the fog feared contact. Claws cracked free from marble. The statue's arms dropped down, fingers splayed, still dripping tar-like liquid. And her eyes, those dark, hollow cracks, shifted. Not turning, not moving, but seeing. Something in you broke loose. Your body finally responded, and you staggered back, almost tripping over roots and shattered tiles. But before you could flee, a new sound sliced through the courtyard. Not the cracking of stone, not the hissing of poison, but quiet footsteps, slow and measured, approaching from somewhere behind you, from the deeper fog. Crunch, crunch. Footsteps too heavy to be human, too deliberate to be blind. The whispering voice returned, frantic. "Run!" before she calls him. Then the world erupted. The statue's jaw split open with a violent, wet crack. The tongue shot out toward you, fast. The footsteps broke into a sprint, charging from behind. You threw yourself sideways, rolling across cold earth as the tongue whipped past your face and struck the ground, melting leaves and stone instantly. A thunderous roar, deep, inhuman, shook the mist from the figure chasing you. You didn't look back. You didn't dare. You ran. Branches tore your sleeves, roots clawed at your ankles, the world around you warped and twisted in motion. The garden shifted, reshaped itself, every turn unfamiliar, every path wrong. Behind you, something enormous crashed through the hedges, each footfall rattling the soil, relentless, enraged. And through all of it, louder than your heartbeat, louder than the monstrous pursuit, you heard a voice echoing in your skull, not from outside but from within. You shouldn't have come back. You didn't understand. But some buried part of you did. This garden was not a place you discovered, not a place you stumbled upon by chance. It was a place that remembered you, and it was done waiting. You crashed through the darkness with the force of a hunted animal, lungs burning, legs numb, yet the garden seemed endless, an expanding labyrinth of night that twisted and stretched with every frantic step. The ground beneath you turned soft, spongy, as though soaked with years of decay. Every time your foot sank into it, something cold and fibrous coiled around your boot, reluctant to let go, as if the earth itself hungered for you. Branches tore at your face, leaving thin stinging cuts, but you barely felt them over the pounding terror. Behind you, the thing that chased you did not shout or scream. It breathed. Loud, cavernous, rasping breaths that vibrated in your ribcage, that made the leaves quiver and the ground tremble, as though the air itself feared to move around it. You veered left, guided by nothing but desperation, and stumbled into a clearing lit by a pale, unnatural glow. The light came from lanterns, 6 of them, each hanging from dead, leafless trees. The lanterns were made of bone, carved into rib cages, skulls, and vertebrae, and each flame was motionless, frozen mid-flicker, frozen the way corpses are frozen, rigid and wrong. In the center of the clearing, a stone well weighted, old and wide, its surface coated in dark moss. Symbols had been carved into the stones, lines and spirals intersecting with jagged runes that pulsed faintly with some buried power. You didn't understand them, yet they felt familiar, as though you had traced them once with eager fingers, long ago, in a life you could no longer remember. Your breath came in sharp bursts as the footsteps approached, slower now, cautious, savoring the hunt. You looked to the well, sensing something in its depth, a cold draft that smelled like damp earth and dead flowers. As you peered over the edge, you saw not water but darkness so thick it looked liquid, a black surface that reflected nothing. A whisper rose from below, quiet but distinct. "You buried her." Your skin turned cold, and you stepped back, heart hammering confusion and horror. You didn't know what it meant. You didn't know who her was. But the words slid into your mind like a memory that didn't belong to you, like someone else's guilt threading itself into your bones. The ground shook. A massive shadow emerged from the trees. It was tall, horribly tall, bones jutting beneath stretched, rotten flesh, its limbs too long, its shoulders hunched as if carrying weight unseen. Its hands dragged across the earth, tipped with claws so aged they looked fossilized. What passed for a face was hidden beneath strands of wet, matted hair. The creature paused, sniffing the air, and when it exhaled, mist curled from its mouth in thick clouds, carrying the stench of graves long forgotten. It turned its head toward you, and though no eyes were visible, you could feel its gaze pierce your skin, sift through your memories, searching for something specific, something it expected you to still carry. You stepped back again, feet brushing against the stone well, and the creature responded instantly. Its body stiffened, breath quickening with a disturbing eagerness. Slowly, it lifted one hand, revealing long fingers that twitched with longing, and it pointed straight at the well. A voice, not from the creature but from the trees, whispered, "She's waiting." You shook your head, choking on fear and confusion. "Who?" The creature tilted its head, and the hair parted just enough to reveal a mouth, wide, lipless, filled with crooked teeth stained brown and black. It opened that mouth and spoke, voice rough and wet as though dragged through mud and blood for centuries. "Mother!" The word tore something open inside you, a violent stab of emotion you didn't understand. Grief without a face, loss without memory. Before you could react, the creature lunged, not toward you, but toward the well, shoving its arms into the darkness as though reaching for someone sunken below. The darkness rippled, then opened, gaping like a throat hungry to swallow. The creature's body bent, contorted, dragged downward by unseen forces, its claws scraping stone, its bones cracking under impossible pressure. It didn't struggle. It didn't resist. It sank eagerly, hungrily, as though descending into a long-awaited embrace. As the last of it disappeared, the earth went silent again. The lantern flames shuddered, flickered, then extinguished one by one until only darkness remained. You stood alone, trembling, the silence suffocating. Then, from deep in the well, a voice called your name. Not a whisper, not a scream, but a calm, lonely voice you recognized instinctively. not from memory, but from dreams you never admitted having. A woman's voice, broken with sorrow. "Come home." The ground vibrated, soft earth shifting beneath you, as if the garden itself leaned closer, waiting for your decision. You felt an ache in your chest, a pull so powerful it almost dragged you forward without your consent. And in that moment, the truth pressed down on you like a hand around your throat. You hadn't come here by accident. You had been summoned. Not by a place. Not by a monster. But by someone who remembered you long after you forgot her. The voice rose again, softer, pleading, wrapped in grief too deep to refuse. "I kept the garden alive for you." And all around you, unseen things stirred, awakened by her call, waiting at the edges of the night. Waiting for you to choose, to flee into the unknown, or descend into the darkness that claimed you once before. The well pulsed, alive, breathing. The garden leaned in. The night whispered with ancient memory. And somewhere below, the woman who called herself your mother, waited with open arms. You stared into the well, every instinct screaming at you to run, yet something deeper, older, refused to let you move. That unseen force tugged at your insides, twisting your fear into longing, grief, and a hollow ache you didn't know you carried. The night around you shifted, branches stretching as if they grew closer, the garden hungry for your answer. That voice, the voice that claimed to be your mother, echoed with fragile hope beneath all the darkness that surrounded you. "Come home." You took a step toward the well, not because you wanted to, but because something in your body recognized the command. It didn't feel like possession. It felt like remembering. Like your bones had been waiting for this moment long before your mind ever knew it existed. The world around you dimmed as though all light pulled toward the well, swallowing the clearing in a cold, bluish darkness that soaked through your skin. Another voice rose from the depths, sharper, frantic, pleading, "Don't look, don't listen, don't remember." Your heart hammered so violently your ribs trembled. There were two voices in the well now. One that beckoned, one that warned. One that felt like love, one that felt like terror. And they both knew your name. You whispered, barely able to breathe, "Who are you?" The answer wasn't a name. It was a memory. It hit you like a blow to the skull. Images erupting, blinding, unstoppable. A dark room lit by flickering candles. A mirror covered with a white sheet. A woman, tall and pale, with long black hair that curled around her wrists. A man behind her, his face hidden, holding a shard of broken glass. A child, crying, screaming, begging them to stop. The woman turned, eyes glowing with something inhuman, and whispered, "For him to live, one must remain." The glass descended, not onto you, onto her, and her scream sounded exactly like the voice calling from below. You gasped, stumbling back, nausea ripping up your throat. This wasn't some random nightmare. It wasn't fantasy. It was the memory of a night you'd spent your entire life forgetting. A sacrifice. A death. A ritual. And you, small, trembling, innocent, had run. You had escaped. But the man behind the mirror had not. His voice, desperate and crumbling with guilt, rose again from the depths. "Don't open your eyes, son. Don't come back. I buried her for a reason." Son. The word shattered you more than the memory did. Your legs gave out and you fell to your knees before the well, breathing sharp and shallow. You looked into that impossible darkness, and for the first time, you saw something moving beneath the surface. Long pale arms, reaching upward, fingers slender and bloodless, stretching toward you with patience born of centuries. Slowly, impossibly, she emerged. Her face rose first, breaking through the black liquid like a reflection forced into flesh. Her eyes were the color of drowning, murky, vacant, yet burning with longing. Her body was broken, twisted, snapped in half at the waist as though the fall had never ended. Her hair drifted in the darkness like weeds beneath a lake. She smiled at you, lips cracked, teeth black with rot, yet the expression carried something painfully gentle. Not hunger. Recognition. Possession. She whispered, voice trembling with devotion, "I died to keep you alive." Your vision blurred as tears stung your eyes. For a horrifying moment, you believed her. You believed you owed her everything. She reached out, pale fingers inches from your face, and the air around you tightened, thick and suffocating. But then the ground behind you split with a deafening crack. The dead trees wrenched upward, roots tearing free as something enormous clawed its way out of the earth. A shape formed in shadow, tall, thin, skeletal, with a body torn open as if something inside had burst through its ribs. Its skull was split down the center, eyes burning like dying embers. Its jaw hung loose, fixed in an eternal scream. It was the same creature you'd seen before, but changed, mutilated, consumed by something worse than death. It dragged itself toward the well, screaming in a voice that shattered thought, "She will take you back under." The woman snapped, twisting her neck toward it with a cracking noise like splintered wood. Her voice dropped to something deeper, older. "He belongs to me. He always has." The creature lunged, its claws raking through her phantom flesh, dissolving parts of her into mist. She shrieked, not with pain, but with rage, and lashed back, plunging her hand into its chest, tearing through bone with sickening ease. Black liquid sprayed across the clearing, sizzling where it landed, burning holes into the soil. The two beings, monstrous, unnatural, yet intimate, tore at each other, ripping flesh, snapping bone, screaming a story older than language. And through it all, the voices invaded your mind. Her voice, "Come back to me." His voice, "Run before she remembers how to open the mirror." The mirror. The bathroom mirror. The one they hid you behind. The one she tried to drag you through. The well water surged upward, splashing over the stones, thick, black, alive. A cold spray hit your hands, and instantly your skin whitened, veins blackening beneath the surface. Her voice sharpened, hysterical, "Don't touch it! It keeps the dead intact." But it was too late. Your blood responded. The darkness climbed your arms, pulling you toward the well with gentle, irresistible force. A single thought bloomed inside you, unwanted, terrifying, absolute. You were never supposed to leave. The ground split further, swallowing trees, lanterns, earth, everything. The air tore open, revealing endless black beyond the clearing. The night folded inward like paper burning from the edges. You grabbed onto the stones of the well, fighting the pull, but it was useless. Your strength, your mind, your will, none of it mattered. The garden didn't want you to escape. It wanted to restore what had been broken. Your mother's face rose again from the water, calm, serene, almost beautiful despite her ruin. She reached out, touching your cheek with a hand that passed straight through flesh and bone, and whispered with infinite tenderness, "You don't remember, but you promised you'd come back for me." And the second voice, barely audible beneath the collapse of the world, whispered with final, heartbroken resignation, "I tried to save you." The darkness surged up and swallowed the clearing, the garden, the trees, the sky, the voices, and finally, you. There was no scream. Just silence. And in that silence, a soft whisper echoed from far below, fading into endless night, "Welcome home."